Welcome to Excel 2010. Excel is composed of many cells. A cell is composed of a column and a row. The columns in Excel are lettered A through Z, and then they do go on further than that. I think they go to AA, AB, so they go on to infinity. The rows of Excel are numbered from 1 until infinity, and in order to get the address of a cell, we first write the column and then the row. So for instance, this is cell A2. This is cell C5. This will be important later on in formulas. We'll get a little bit more into references and what that means in formulas. But in this video, we're just going to go over all the basics. I'm going to go ahead and write a few things in here, and I'll just write names of people that I know. Alright, so when I select each one of these, I can select one at a time, or if I hold down the left mouse button, I can drag up and select the entire column. In order to move, you have to position your mouse on this black border until it has 4 arrows, and then when you click, you can drag and move it around. In order to select the entire column, I click on C and I will select the entire column. The same thing goes for a row. I can select on a row and we'll select an entire row. I'm going to write in some last name, and then I'm going to write what sport each of these people play. Excel is really good to use as kind of a giant table. It's useful for sorting information according to categories. So if we want to put in the categories, we can put them up here. And as you can see, this is cutting off my last name because Frisbee's right here. In order to expand this column so that it is the length of the longest word or cell within the column, we can double click in between the columns D and E, and it will automatically expand the length of D to show all of the contents of column D. If we wanted to insert another person in front of in between Janine and Grant, we can right click over here and click insert, and that is going to insert a column or another row right under Janine. If we wanted to create, let me fill this in. If we wanted to create another row that included the middle initial, we could insert, and it will insert to the left. If we wanted to copy all of this, we could drag from one corner to the other, and now we have it all selected, and we can move it around with the same technique that we demonstrated before. Now I'm going to show you an advanced technique. Anyways, over here, if I wanted to have Matt fill an entire column or fill a certain number of rows in a column, I can select this plus sign. Notice it is different than the moving sign. It is not 4 arrows, it is instead a small black plus sign. If I select that, I can drag it down and it'll fill every row that I drag it to with Matt. This gets a little bit more useful when you want to do an entire row or a range. If you want to do a range, you can select it and then drag it down, and it will recreate the items of the range in the same order that they were previously in. So in this case, it will start with Carl all the time, Grant, Cardrick, Nick, Kevin. So it follows patterns that the user creates. Now what's interesting is if we use terms that are a noticeable pattern to Excel, it will guess at what's next in the pattern. So we've used Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. If we scroll down, the next one will actually be Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then it will go back to Monday if we keep going. So it knows that days of the week typically go in this order, and so it follows that pattern once we've established a few other ones. It'll even work if we just start with 1, but with numbers it's a little bit different. With numbers, if we want to fill 1 all the way down, we can do that, but if we set the pattern of 1, 2, 3, it'll guess that the next number is 4, 5, 6, and it will fill in that order. So numbers are a little bit different than recognizable patterns like the days of the week, but this also works. This also works with months. So you can very easily fill a column of months, and it also works if you want to fill rows. So if you're creating a calendar, this is very useful. So if you're making a calendar, you can very easily match the date to the month, and then you could put in birthdays. So Excel is very useful for creating tables. One other important thing that you use in Excel that you don't typically use in other programs is borders. You can use borders to make a more clear differentiation between information. Here we've used borders to establish that these are axis, the vertical axis and the horizontal axis, which allow us to better understand the context of these months. We could use borders to demonstrate a sum. So if we're showing that 12 plus 12 plus 12 is equal to 36, we can demonstrate that 36 is a summation by putting a border on the bottom. Borders are just really useful to make your information more clear. If you want to delete a row and you highlight the whole row, that's very easy. If you just want to delete a section of a row, typically Excel will ask you if you want to shift the cells up, if you want to delete the entire row, or if you want to shift the cells left. Let me give you a good example. Most of the time, because we use the table format, we'll be shifting the cells up. That makes the most sense. But if we want to delete this, we want to shift the cells left. And if you're selecting cells in one column, it typically defaults to shifting cells left. If you're selecting multiple columns in a row, it'll default to shift cells up. And those are the basics of Excel. Definitely play around with copying cells with this drag down, and play around with borders, and play around with just moving things. Get very comfortable with the controls of Excel, as those will come up more and more in the more advanced tutorials.